Withdrawals of this size aren't for people like you. The sentence didn't slip. It struck sharp, deliberate, public. It was meant to cut. His voice, jagged with contempt, sliced through the quiet lobby of First National Bank like a gavel slamming down on guilt that hadn't even been proven. Vanessa Clark stood on the other side of the glass partition, steady as marble, her cream blazer almost glowing beneath the flat office lights. She didn't blink, she didn't fold. But the man in the blue vest leaned forward as if he'd cornered prey. Papers clenched in his fists. He shook them like evidence in a trial only he believed in. "This isn't monopoly money," he snarled. "5 million? No way it belongs to you." Behind them, the air shifted. A security guard adjusted his stance, eyes narrowing as though a threat had just walked in. Except the only threat was a black woman who had asked for what was hers. 2 customers lifted their phones, red recording lights blinking like tiny sirens. The story was already leaving the building. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Vanessa. The banker's jaw tightened, his anger swelling with every second she refused to break. "Don't stare at me like that. We've seen the type flash a black card, throw around numbers, and hope nobody checks. Well, we check here." He turned slightly, barking toward the security officer. "Be ready. This is a fraud case waiting to explode." The guard stepped closer, hand brushing the radio at his shoulder. The message was clear. One word from the man in the vest, and Vanessa would be escorted out like a criminal. A whisper rose from the line of waiting customers. "She gave her ID," a woman muttered. "So why are they still pressing?" Another man shook his head, eyes locked on his phone screen. "This doesn't feel right," he whispered to no one in particular. Still, Vanessa didn't move, arms folded, posture anchored. The silence wasn't hesitation, it was defiance. Every second she held it, the tension doubled. The banker slammed the papers against the glass again. "Say something," he demanded, spit flecking the surface. "Where's this money from? Who did you steal it from? Because it's sure as hell not yours." His words ricocheted across the lobby, bouncing off marble and metal, landing heavy in every ear. Gasps followed. Phones tilted higher. The moment was being etched into memory and into evidence. Vanessa inhaled once, slow and deliberate. No outrage, no panic, just air, calm and unshaken. And for a split second, in that silence, the question wasn't whether she belonged here. It was whether the bank did. The silence unsettled him more than any outburst could have. He expected yelling, tears, maybe even begging. Instead, Vanessa just stood there, arms folded, her gaze fixed and unblinking. "Don't just stand there," he snapped, his voice cracking with desperation. "Answer me. You think you can walk in here dressed like that, toss a number this big on the table, and we'll just hand it over?" He gestured at her blazer with a sneer. "A cream jacket doesn't make you rich. It makes you look like you're playing dress-up." A murmur ran through the line. A woman with a stroller shook her head, muttering, "This isn't policy, this is personal." From the far corner, a young man in a green jacket raised his phone higher. His voice trembled but carried, "Why are you treating her like a thief? She gave her ID, her card, what else do you want?" The banker turned sharply, pointing a finger at the witness. "Put that down before I call security on you, too." His authority cracked, stretched too thin, but his tone still tried to claim the room. The security guard shifted closer to Vanessa, posture stiff, fingers tapping his radio. "Ma'am, I need you to step aside while we verify these documents." Vanessa finally moved. Slowly, deliberately. She reached into her bag, not for a weapon, not even for her wallet, just a tablet case. She placed it on the counter with a soft thud, the sound far too calm for the chaos swirling around them. The banker smirked. "A tablet? That's your proof?" He laughed, high and mocking. "Lady, you don't even understand what we're asking." But Vanessa's voice broke through, low and steady. "Run my name." The command was quiet, but it landed heavier than his shouting. He faltered, just for a breath, before scoffing again. "Run your name? This isn't some walk-in center. You're not even verified in our system." The young man filming shook his head. "You didn't even check." Another customer, an older woman near the window, leaned to the person beside her. "She's calm. Too calm. Something's about to flip." But the banker was blind to it. His face flushed red, his voice climbing louder. "You're wasting everyone's time. People like you walk in with stories, thinking silence will make us believe you. It doesn't. It makes you look guilty. He slammed the papers one more time against the glass. They bent, crumpled, but his rage didn't soften. Still, Vanessa stood, her silence a blade sharper than his insults. The lobby's air thickened, heavy with the question no one dared say out loud yet. What if she wasn't who they thought she was? What if she was something more? The lobby doors hissed open, and with them came heavier footsteps measured, deliberate, carrying the weight of authority. Richard Hale, branch manager, gray suit pressed sharp, tie knotted tight, strode forward like the room belonged to him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't glance at the documents. He just scanned Vanessa with one cold sweep, the kind meant to shrink a person before they spoke. "What's the issue?" he asked flatly, but his eyes never left her face. The teller in the vest jumped at the chance. She's trying to make a $5 million withdrawal. No verified source, no proper credentials. Likely fraudulent. Hale's lips curved, not into a smile, but something thinner, meaner. Of course. He stepped closer to the glass. "Ma'am, I'm going to make this very clear. Funds of this magnitude don't just materialize. You'll need to explain exactly where this money came from." Vanessa's gaze stayed level. "Run my name." Her words were calm, even, almost too simple. But Hale scoffed, as if the request itself was offensive. "Your name?" He leaned forward, voice dripping with disdain. "That's not how this works. People walk in here every week with fake IDs, false accounts, thinking we won't see through it. But I see it, and I see right through you." Gasps rippled through the room. The young man filming whispered, "He hasn't even looked at her documents." A woman in line muttered, "This feels off. She's done nothing wrong." But Hale wasn't listening. He jabbed a finger at the security guard. "Stand by. If she refuses to cooperate, you escort her out immediately." The guard's jaw tightened. He nodded, but unease flickered across his eyes. Vanessa reached forward, sliding a slim black card across the counter. It caught the light, heavy, unmistakable, but Hale didn't pick it up. He tapped the glass instead, shaking his head. "Anyone can print one of these online," he sneered. "What you can't fake is credibility, and you, ma'am, don't have it." The room bristled. Someone whispered, "That's a black card." Another muttered, "He didn't even check it." Phones tilted higher, red dots recording every second. Hale ignored them all. His voice rose, sharp enough to scratch the walls. "This is stolen money, and unless you want the police called right now, you need to step away from this desk." The accusation landed like a hammer. The lobby froze. Even the security guard stiffened, his hand hovering near the radio but not moving further. Vanessa didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She simply crossed her arms again, still as stone. The storm was building, but she refused to bend to it. Richard Hale's words still hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. "This is stolen money." The accusation wasn't just heard, it was absorbed, staining the room. But Vanessa didn't react. She didn't reach for her card again. She didn't plead or protest. She simply folded her arms tighter across her chest, standing still, the weight of her silence louder than his shouting. Hale frowned. He wasn't used to silence. He was used to submission voices scrambling to explain, defend, apologize. But Vanessa gave him nothing. The teller shifted uncomfortably beside him. "She won't even deny it," he said, forcing a laugh. "That says it all, doesn't it?" The security guard's eyes narrowed. He glanced at Vanessa, then back at Hale. His hand hovered near the radio, but hesitation pinned him still. Across the lobby, whispers spread like sparks. "She's calm. Too calm. Doesn't look guilty to me." The young man with the phone whispered into his recording, "This doesn't feel like fraud. This feels like profiling." Hale's irritation deepened. He slammed his palm against the counter, the sound snapping through the lobby like a gunshot. "Do you hear me? You don't belong here. Not in this bank. Not with this request." Vanessa blinked once, slowly. Her voice, when it came, was level and cool. "Finished?" The single word cracked something in the air. The banker froze for half a second, thrown off by how little power his anger had over her. "Don't play games with me," Hale growled, recovering fast. "I'll have security drag you out if I must." Vanessa tilted her head just slightly, her gaze steady, unwavering. "If that's what you believe, do it." The challenge wasn't shouted. It wasn't even sharp. It was soft, calm, too calm. And that calmness rattled him more than open defiance ever could. The older woman near the window shook her head. "She's not scared at all," she whispered. "If she were lying, she'd be panicking." Another customer murmured, "She looks like she's waiting for something." And she was. Because Vanessa knew storms burn themselves out, and the louder they rage, the faster they collapse. So she stood there, her silence anchoring the room, while the man across from her mistook it for weakness. The quiet cracked, not from Vanessa, but from the back of the line. A young man in a green hoodie lowered his phone just enough for his voice to carry. She gave her ID. She gave her card. Why are you treating her like a criminal? Heads turned. The room shifted. Phones tilted higher. Richard Hale's jaw tightened. "Sir, stay out of this. This is a bank matter." But the man didn't lower his gaze. "Then why are you raising your voice like it's a courtroom?" Gasps rippled. A mother with a stroller clutched the handle tighter. An older man by the coffee station muttered, "He's right. Something's off." The teller snapped back, "Mind your own business." But it was too late. The words had already broken the dam. A woman in a red scarf spoke up next. Her tone shook, but her conviction didn't. "I've banked here for 20 years. I've never seen a client treated like this. Not once." Hale spun toward her, his authority slipping. "Ma'am, please refrain from interfering." She raised her chin. "Number, you refrain from humiliating people in front of us." The security guard shifted, caught between orders and conscience. His radio buzzed faintly at his hip, but he didn't touch it. His eyes lingered on Vanessa, still unmoved, still silent. The young man with the phone whispered toward his camera, "They're pushing her because of how she looks. That's all this island." Across the lobby, another customer muttered, "This is how it starts. First suspicion, then accusation, then removal. We've seen it before." The tension thickened. Hale slammed his palm on the counter again, but this time the sound didn't command the room. It fractured it. "Enough," he barked. "This withdrawal is invalid. If she refuses to provide proof, we treat it as theft. Security prepare to escort her out." But the crowd wasn't silent anymore. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into voices. "You haven't even checked her documents. She's standing here calm and you're shouting. This feels wrong." For the first time, the balance tipped. Hale wasn't in full control. The room was questioning him, not her. And still, Vanessa hadn't moved. Her silence wasn't just defiance now. It was strategy. She let the witnesses speak, let the truth grow louder than his authority. And as the phones kept recording, the question hanging in the air grew heavier, undeniable. Who really belonged in this bank? Richard Hale's patience finally snapped. His face flushed crimson as he leaned across the counter, eyes locked on Vanessa like she was prey. "You're a fraud," he spat, voice sharp enough to pierce the lobby. "People like you walk in here dressed up, thinking a fancy card makes you credible. But you don't belong here, not with numbers like this. Not in this branch, not in this bank." The words landed like blows, not just at her, but at everyone listening. The woman in the red scarf shook her head violently. "You don't get to say that, not without proof." Hale turned his fury on her. "Stay silent, or I'll have you escorted out too." The young man in the green hoodie spoke up again, louder this time. "She hasn't raised her voice once. She hasn't resisted. And you're calling her a thief? That says more about you than about her." The teller chimed in, desperate to back his boss. "Look at her. Nothing about her screams legitimate. She's stalling because she knows the cops are coming." Gasps rippled. A teenager near the back muttered, "This is insane." His mother pulled him closer, whispering, "Watch closely. This is how bias looks in real time." Hale slammed the counter again, rattling the glass. "You think standing silent makes you powerful? It makes you suspicious. It makes you guilty." The security guard finally spoke, his voice low but audible. "Sir, she hasn't broken any law." Hale spun, eyes blazing. "You work for me. Do your job." But the guard didn't move. His hesitation spoke volumes. The crowd murmured louder now, voices weaving into one steady undercurrent. Phones kept recording. Red lights dotted the room like constellations, proof against every word being hurled at her. Vanessa finally moved, just a fraction tilting her head, her eyes steady, her arms still folded. Her silence wasn't passive. It was deliberate, chosen. And that choice terrified Hale more than defiance ever could. He jabbed a finger at her once more, his voice cracking under its own fury. "You're nothing but a con artist parading around like you own the place. And I promise you this, by the end of today, you'll be out of this building in handcuffs." The room froze. Phones caught every syllable. And Vanessa, calm as stone, blinked once slow, measured before returning her gaze to him. She still hadn't raised her voice. But the silence was cutting him to pieces. The tension snapped like glass under pressure. Richard Hale reached across the counter and snatched Vanessa's documents off the desk. The papers crumpled in his fist, edges tearing under his grip. He waved them in the air like contraband. "This is done. These won't save you." Gasps erupted. A woman in line clutched her chest. The young man in the green hoodie whispered, "He just stole her paperwork." His camera caught every second. Hale turned, barking at the security guard. "Escort her out, now. She's trespassing, and we're seizing this material as evidence." The guard hesitated. His eyes flicked from Hale's shaking hands to Vanessa's calm, still figure. "Sir, she hasn't resisted." "Don't argue with me," Hale snapped. "She's a thief. Get her out before she embarrasses this institution any further." The teller smirked, emboldened by Hale's rage. "We should freeze her account, too. People like this drain money and vanish. Better to cut it off now." The words fell like daggers. Vanessa's silence held, but the room itself stirred. Murmurs rose into a low chorus. "She didn't do anything. They can't just take her papers. This is crossing a line." An older man near the coffee machine shook his head. "This isn't banking. This is harassment." Still, Hale pressed forward. He handed the crumpled documents to the teller, who stuffed them into a folder like evidence in a case already judged. "Log this," Hale ordered. "We'll make sure her record follows her. Fraudulent claims don't just disappear." The crowd stiffened, phones raised higher. The story wasn't just leaving the building, it was spreading in real time. Vanessa exhaled once, her arms still folded. She didn't reach for the papers. She didn't argue for their return. Her stillness was sharper than any protest. But Hale mistook it for weakness. He leaned closer, his voice low but laced with venom. "You thought you could walk in here and take millions? That silence of yours, it won't save you. It's an admission. And in a moment, security will walk you out like the fraud you are." The security guard's hand twitched near his radio, but again, he didn't move. His hesitation stretched into silence that the crowd noticed. The young man in the hoodie called out, voice breaking but clear, "She's not a fraud. You're making her one." Gasps followed. All eyes shifted back to Vanessa, waiting, watching. And though Hale thought he'd seized control, the truth was clearer than ever. Every second of his outburst was building to something he couldn't stop. The storm was coming, and she was letting it arrive. The crumpled papers still sat in the teller's folder like trophies of humiliation. The lobby buzzed with whispers, unease thick as smoke. Phones hovered high, recording every angle. Vanessa finally moved. Not with rage, not with trembling hands, but with a calm precision that cut deeper than fury ever could. She reached into her blazer, pulled out her phone, and tapped once. "Carla," she said softly, but the name carried across the marble room like a bell. On the other end, her assistant answered instantly. "Yes, Miss Clark." Dozens of eyes widened. Hale froze, the sound of her surname settling in the air like a spark. Vanessa's gaze never left his. "Activate Protocol 6. "Men?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. The young man in the hoodie whispered into his phone, "She just gave an order, like she's running something bigger." Carla's voice was crisp, efficient. "Understood. Internal systems engaged. Logging timestamp of escalation. Documenting every word spoken in this branch since your arrival." The security guard shifted, his face caught between duty and doubt. His radio crackled once, but he didn't lift it. Hale scoffed, trying to claw back authority. "Protocol? What, you think a phone call saves you?" He laughed, but it came brittle, shallow. "Ma'am, this is a bank, not your playground." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed even. "You're right. It isn't my playground. It's my institution, and you just declared war inside it." The room stilled. The words weren't loud, but they landed heavy, undeniable. Carla's voice returned through the phone speaker. "Phase 1 complete. All branch communications flagged. Incident now mirrored to compliance board. Do you wish to escalate further?" The crowd buzzed louder. A woman whispered, "Compliance board? That's corporate talk." Another muttered, "She's not bluffing. You can hear it." Hale's face twitched. He slammed his fist on the counter again, but this time the sound rang hollow. "You think some scripted jargon scares me? You're nothing but a con artist trying to sound powerful. Vanessa didn't break. She lifted her phone slightly higher. Keep logging, Carla. Don't miss a word. Yes, Miss Clark. Every insult, every accusation has been captured. The young man with the hoodie panned his phone between Vanessa and Hale, whispering to his viewers. This isn't over. Something's about to flip. For the first time, Hale's authority didn't feel absolute. It felt brittle. And Vanessa, silent for so long, had finally unsheathed her first weapon, not her voice, not her documents, but her power. The storm was no longer approaching. It had already begun. The lobby seemed to hold its breath. Carla's voice on speaker had already shifted the balance, but it was Vanessa herself who carried the weight of the room. She lowered her phone, eyes still locked on Richard Hale. You've called me a fraud. You've accused me of theft. You've humiliated me in front of witnesses. Her voice was steady, low, but each word landed with the force of a gavel. Phones tilted higher, capturing every syllable. And yet, she unfolded her arms, straightening to her full height. I'm still standing here. Ask yourself why. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. The crowd leaned in, waiting, sensing something seismic about to crack open. Richard scoffed, but his voice had lost its edge. You're bluffing. You have nothing. Vanessa's gaze sharpened. Bluffing? She let the word hang, then delivered the blow. I am Vanessa Clark, CEO of Summit Enterprises, and 2 years ago my company acquired this bank. The words detonated. Gasps filled the room. The woman in the red scarf pressed a hand to her mouth. The young man in the hoodie whispered into his phone. She owns it. She actually owns it. Even the security guard stepped back, his posture shifting, eyes wide. Richard froze, his face drained of color as the name sank in. He knew it. Everyone in finance knew it. Summit Enterprises, the billion-dollar conglomerate that had swallowed Summit Wealth and half a dozen institutions just like it. Vanessa's tone didn't rise, but it cut deeper now, precise and merciless. You thought silence meant weakness. It meant patience. It meant watching you expose yourself, word by word, insult by insult. And now, every second of this is logged against you. Carla's voice flowed through the phone again, cold and efficient. Confirmation. Miss Clark's identity verified. Summit acquisition documents cross-referenced. Compliance board notified. They are listening live. The lobby erupted. Customers murmured. Phones shook in trembling hands. A teenager whispered, "This is going viral already." Richard stumbled for words. This doesn't change anything. You can't just walk in here without..." Vanessa cut him off. "Without what? Without permission? Without your validation?" She stepped closer, the marble floor carrying her weight like thunder. "I don't need your approval to exist in the bank I own." Gasps turned into scattered claps. Someone near the back whispered, "She's our CEO." Another echoed, "She really runs this place." Richard tried to summon authority, but his voice cracked under the pressure. This is a setup. You tricked us." Vanessa's lips curved into the faintest, coldest smile. "Number, I tested you, and you failed." The crowd had shifted. The room no longer belonged to Richard, or to the teller, or to the institution's protocols. It belonged to her. And in that moment, the balance of power inverted completely. The room broke, not with chaos, but with realization. Whispers rippled into shouts. A woman near the entrance clapped once, hesitant then again, louder. Another followed, then another, until the sound swelled into applause that rolled across the marble floor like a tide. "She owns the bank," someone said aloud, disbelief bending into awe. "She's the CEO," another confirmed, phone held high. The teller who had smirked only minutes ago shrank back, the folder of crumpled papers slipping from his grip. His face drained of color. No, this can't be real." Richard Hale staggered a step, sweat beading along his hairline. His once sharp voice cracked. "Phones down. This is confidential property. You can't record." But no one listened. The young man in the hoodie muttered into his lens, "They just harassed the owner of the bank they work for." His words ignited the crowd. The security guard, caught in the storm, lowered his hand from the radio. He looked directly at Vanessa, then gave the faintest nod and unspoken acknowledgement of who held the real authority. The red-scarfed woman stepped forward, voice clear now, unshaking. "You tried to erase her in front of us, and you've been exposed." Hale's composure fractured. He pointed wildly at Vanessa, desperation breaking through. You set us up. You walked in here dressed down on purpose. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting like glass. Number, I walked in as myself. You chose what story to tell about me, and you chose wrong. The crowd murmured again, this time with conviction. A man by the window said, I'll never look at this place the same way again. A teenager whispered, This is history. The teller stumbled backward, knocking into the espresso cart. His hands shook. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But Carla's voice on the phone rang out like judgment. Ignorance is not a defense. Every insult, every accusation is documented. Their employment records are being reviewed as we speak. Phones buzzed as messages poured in alerts, reposts, live streams. The story wasn't just inside the bank anymore. It was already breaking beyond its walls. Hale's face twisted, torn between fear and rage. You don't get to humiliate me in my own branch. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice measured, final. Correction, this isn't your branch, it's mine, and humiliation is what you did to yourself. The applause grew louder. The walls of marble and glass that once protected authority now echoed with the sound of reckoning, and in the center of it all, Vanessa stood unshaken, the storm no longer looming but fully unleashed, yet completely under her control. The applause hadn't even faded when Vanessa lifted her phone again. Her tone was calm, almost surgical. Carla, she said evenly, initiate immediate terminations. Richard Hale, teller on Station 4, both access credentials revoked. Her words landed like a hammer. Carla's voice replied, crisp as steel. Processing now. Branch security systems updating. Huh. A second later, Hale's earpiece crackled and went dead. The monitor behind the counter flickered, his login screen collapsing into an error message. The teller fumbled at his keyboard, panic rising as his password failed again and again. What's happening? He stammered, his voice shrill. Vanessa didn't flinch. You're watching the system decide you don't exist here anymore. The crowd gasped as both men's ID badges blinked red. The tiny security chips inside deactivated. Hale's eyes went wide. You can't do this. Not here. Not in front of. Yes, Vanessa cut in, her voice steady, precise. Here, exactly here, because you chose to shame me publicly, and now you'll face the same. The red-scarfed woman crossed her arms, her voice rising. That's justice. Phones zoomed closer, capturing Hale's trembling hands as he slammed his badge against the scanner again and again. Each time, the same sound, a hollow beep and a cold red light. Invalid user, the machine displayed. The teller tried his own. Red. Again. Please, I have a family, he begged, turning desperate. I didn't mean... Vanessa's gaze was unyielding. You meant every word, and every word is recorded. Carla's voice chimed in again, almost merciless. Confirmation. Both employees locked out of all systems. HR termination files auto-generated. Compliance board notified. The lobby erupted in murmurs. Some gasped in shock. Others whispered, She really did it. She just erased them. Hale staggered backward, his authority collapsing with every second. You think you can destroy my career with a phone call? Vanessa stepped closer, her words cold, cutting. Number, you destroyed it yourself when you mistook prejudice for policy. I only pressed the button. The applause returned, louder this time, rolling over the marble walls. The phones captured every angle of Richard Hale's downfall, every second of his humiliation. And in the center of the storm, Vanessa remained unshaken, her power undeniable, her justice swift, her silence finally broken not by pleading, but by command. The branch had gone silent, the kind of silence that follows thunder, heavy, electric, irreversible. Richard Hale stood pale and trembling, his badge still blinking red in his palm. The teller slumped in his chair, eyes wet, hands shaking over a frozen keyboard. The crowd pressed in closer, phones raised high, capturing the aftermath of their own disbelief. Vanessa didn't move quickly. She didn't need to. She stepped forward with calm, deliberate strides, every heel click echoing like punctuation. When she stopped at the counter, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. You called me a fraud in a bank I own. The sentence landed like a verdict. A wave of murmurs surged through the room, followed by a ripple of applause that broke into full thunder. Customers cheered, clapped, some even whistled. Hale tried one last time to gather himself. This isn't fair. Vanessa cut him off, her words like glass. Fairness ended the moment you decided my silence was guilt. You mistook calm for weakness. That was your last mistake. She turned slightly, addressing not just Hale, not just the teller, but everyone in the lobby, and beyond the phones broadcasting live. Dignity doesn't shout. Power doesn't scream. It moves quietly, and when it strikes, there's no undoing it. The red-scarfed woman whispered to her neighbor, "That's the line. That's the one they'll replay." Vanessa's gaze swept the room once more. Her voice softened, but the words carried like a closing bell. Remember this moment. Justice doesn't need volume. It needs truth, and truth has already spoken. For a heartbeat, the lobby was suspended in silence. Then the applause swelled again, louder, shaking the marble walls. Phones buzzed with notifications, live streams exploding with views, comments flooding faster than anyone could read. The security guard lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect. The customers parted, giving Vanessa a clear path to the exit. She didn't look back at Hale. She didn't need to. His downfall was complete, sealed not by her anger, but by her composure. As she pushed open the glass doors, sunlight spilled into the lobby. Her silhouette cut sharp against it, a reminder, a warning, and an inspiration all at once. Behind her, the bank she owned was forever changed. And the world watching through their screens had learned a truth they would never forget. Silence is not weakness. It is the sharpest form of power.